Лузі, червона калина, похилилася. Щось наша славна Україна зажурилася. А ми тою червону калину підемо, а ми нашу славну Україну розвеселимо. Прийшли наші стрільці січові у кровавий дай, визволяти рідну Україну з московських кайдан. А ми ті ворожі кайдани розірвемо.
Hello everyone, I am the Enforcer, and today we're going to be covering the 6th day of the war in Ukraine. I know it is the 7th day, but unfortunately due to internet connectivity issues, the stream was promptly cut off last night around the halfway mark, and so we're going to start covering the information about day 6 on the 7th day, and I'm going to try and wrap up everything that was not covered today, and there will of course be the usual 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time live stream that happens every single night tonight as well. So make sure to tune into that one, and I will cover all of the day 7 events that have happened so far. So, just to recap to everyone who may be new to the stream, yesterday we covered the Northern Theater around the Kyiv area and the Zitomir area, as well as Sumy. If you would like to see the information that was covered yesterday, please go to my channel and check out the part 1 stream for day 6. This is the part 2 stream. And so I will be discussing the last things that I have in Kharkiv to cover, because that was covered as well in the last stream. And then we'll finally be moving on to the southern front, and I'll be asking some questions. I'll be answering some questions for y'all along the way. So without further ado, let me get started. So where we left off yesterday, we had already covered the indiscriminate bombardments of Kharkiv by the Russians. But now today, we're going to be talking about the ammunition dump that was blown up on the southeastern side, of the city. I'll show you all those videos again so that way y'all can remember where we left off, and I can too, so that way I can keep this thing moving on forward. So I'll show you all the video of that again. I believe there was 2 views. This is the first one, and I'll just let y'all watch the video. So we don't actually know what hit the ammunition dump. All we know is that the explosion was extremely large. Of course, that's probably expected when anything hits an ammunition dump, honestly. But the fact of the matter is that the explosion was massive, and it got a lot of videos taken of it because it was just such an, not an awesome sight in a way that is like, you know, awesome, awesome in the minor sense, but awesome in the way of just the absolute scale of this explosion was just left people in awe of it. Anyways, I'll show y'all the next video and let y'all see the other view of it.
Аэродром. Опять летит. Пизда! Охуеть, сейчас ударная волна, ложись! Ебать, дом трусит.
As you can see, the explosion was massive. With that, the information within the city of Kharkiv, because by the way, just in case if y'all did not know and y'all haven't watched the other stream, the city of Kharkiv was declared surrounded and under siege yesterday for the first time officially. So with that information, now the city of Kharkiv is cut off from logistics and supplies, which will make the situation for the Ukrainian defenders a little bit more difficult, but I don't believe it'll be too difficult for them because due to their stubborn determination to just not give up, which is completely admirable. There's very little countries in the world that have leaders like Zelensky and people like the Ukrainians, and I'm sure that the city of Kharkiv won't be in that bad trouble. They'll generally maintain their hold of the city for quite some time, maybe the next few days. So moving on down here to the city of Chuhiv, I believe that's the correct way to pronounce that. It is on the very edge of the Russian zone of control now that is surrounding the city, and yesterday we saw that there was a decent amount of artillery bombardment happening within that village, which suggests that the Ukrainians are holding their ground as good as possible. I'm sorry, I beg everyone's pardon. Apparently, the wrong video was put up here, because there was actually another video of an artillery bombardment happening there, but apparently because my map got erased last night and I'm having to use another one, apparently the links have been mixed up, and apparently, because I fixed that before the stream yesterday, but today it appears that this map is a little bit behind and it was not updated with the last one I did before the stream. So we'll just move on from that, but what y'all can get from that is that there was a decent artillery bombardment that happened in the area of Chugiyev, and it appears that the Ukrainians may try and break the siege, although I won't report too much about Ukrainian movements, positions, and plans, because if there are Russians watching the stream, and if somehow they actually report back hypotheticals that I'm talking about with what the Ukrainians might do, I do not want that to get out to them. So we'll just leave that alone, and we will move on to further down to the southern front, but before I do, I'm going to take a look at the chat and try and answer as many questions as possible. So, we've got a two-part question from Jamel. Thank you so much for asking the question. And one, why wouldn't the USA get involved under the radar? CIA has a long history in Vietnam and all the Middle Eastern conflicts and plays a large role in resistance to occupiers. The reason why I don't think the US is getting involved in kind of like a under the table kind of way is because primarily, excuse me, but primarily they're not getting involved in a underhanded kind of way because I think they're kind of scared that the Russians will immediately escalate this into some kind of nuclear war. So even if they got indirectly involved, if the Russians were able to even make a loose claim that they were there, they would most likely try and use that to escalate this into a global conflict. Although if it was a global conflict, they would probably resort to a straight-up nuclear exchange with the Russians at this point, because now we have information to suggest, like I've been saying since the start, that nearly the entire Russian army is currently involved in the invasion of Ukraine. Originally, it was believed that it was a very small portion of the Russian army due to how many people understand the numbers, because in total, the entire Russian military is composed of around 1 million people. But the ground forces, which is what they call the army in Russia these days, is only composed of around 230,000 soldiers. And so if you have something like 190,000 ground forces invading Ukraine, that's around 80 to 90% of their army is currently tied up fighting Ukraine alone. And they're not even doing that great of a job at it, as we've seen over the past 6, now 7 days. But the information on the 7th day will be coming tonight as I'm able to gather that up in its entirety. But anyways, I'll move on to the next question. What else we got here? Because their ruble is worthless. Yeah, it is worthless. Actually, I have a little pin up here, and I'll talk about that right now. That the ruble is actually less, and I don't know anything about this, but this has been a thing that's circling around the internet, is that the ruble is worth less than something called a Robux. And it's a form of in-game currency for a really popular online game called Roblox. But honestly, I've never actually played Roblox, and I don't really know what a Robux is worth. But nonetheless, it appears that the statement is true that a ruble is now worth less than video game currency, which is hilarious. And it's also very impressive that the economic sanctions around the world have made such an impact on the Russian ruble. Not that it was worth a lot from the start, but now it's worth a lot less, if you see what I'm saying there. So, I mean, like, that's really something. I mean, like, when you really think about it, apparently these economic sanctions that the West has imposed on Russia have actually been very severe due to just the inflation of their currency alone. So, that being said, I'll move on to the next question. Um, Best info on the internet. Thank you so much. I try and gather up the best info I can. Just to try and make sure that everything's accurate. But I only use things most of the time that are confirmed. There are a couple of instances where I can't confirm things, like the location of this command vehicle that was captured. I couldn't confirm that. But usually I try and get confirmed locations for everything I put on the map and all the frontline developments I'm making at this point, because I don't want to be reporting any false information, because I have seen that there's a decent amount of maps now that show that the Russians are in certain places, yet there's no actual like recordable or substantial evidence to prove that either way. So to that degree, I try and report the best information. So thank you so much for telling me that I'm reporting good stuff. It means a lot to me. Do you think Russia will use tactical nukes? Why wouldn't they? I don't believe Russia would use tactical nukes because, one, the combination of them is already severe. There's currently a UN General Council meeting, I believe, which is one of the few times it's happened in history, if I got the name of that correct. But I don't believe they use tactical nukes because that will require an international response from everyone, including some of their closer allies these days, like the Chinese, because that kind of action against a country during wartime would be completely unacceptable. That would be like them invading Afghanistan, and once the Mujahideen started to resist them, they just started dropping tactical nukes on villages. That wouldn't have looked well then. It certainly won't look well now. And although the Russians appear to be almost losing their minds in terms of what they're doing these days, I do not believe that they would go to the point, and this is entirely speculation, this is just what I believe, so take this with a grain of salt, but I don't think they'd actually use tactical nukes on Ukraine just due to those reasons. So, I'll move on to the next question. Does Russia have any chance of taking over and occupying a country that doesn't want to be taken over? I mean, yeah, kind of. I mean, like, there's proof to show that that's been true in other places, like Chechnya, because Chechnya rebelled, and then they just slowly ground down the Chechens over the course of like 9 years, and now Chechnya's, I believe they have like no terrorist attacks at this point, or if there are, they're so small they're not reported anymore. And they've kind of like taken over that area, although it didn't want to be taken over, and it took two different wars and thousands of lives to do that, but nonetheless, they did do it, which shows that they could invade a country, and with enough, pretty much just like pure power, they could like kind of crush the local population into submission. But with a country the size of Ukraine, and considering that they're already having to use something like 80% of their forces just to do what they're doing right now, I would have to say that that would be very unlikely for Ukraine. I believe that they would just end up with an Afghanistan situation in Ukraine where they're constantly fighting the civilians. Freedom fighters for about like 10 years or so. It would eat up a whole bunch of their resources, and Russia doesn't have that kind of resources to just expend on something like this. And they would end up having to withdraw, and Ukraine would exist the way it does for the most part today again. So that's what I'm thinking on that issue at the moment. Do you believe that Biden's comments during the State of the Union address make the tensions worse? While I watched, I don't really do a lot of comments on American politics, and I didn't really watch the State of the Union last night. I only got snippets of it because I was trying to, work on the stream and get it put together. So I don't really know. I'd have to look more at the State of the Union and maybe address that in the future. But at the moment, I'm going to just kind of like skirt over that and maybe get back to that maybe tomorrow. Oh man, a lot more comments. Do you need me to question? Oh no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm sure a lot of countries' money is worth worse less than Robux. Yes, that's true. But Russia's currency was worth more than a Roebuck, and now it's worth less than a Roebuck. And so while other countries do have less valuable currency, the fact that Russian inflation is set in so bad is the reason why I've outlined it for them, because it was actually worth a decent bit more than a Roebuck. Not a lot, but now it's worth a lot less. And so I was just saying that to show that the economic sanctions are having an impact. Let's see. UN voted and Russia has to stop the attack. I'm not really sure how UN resolutions and votes work. I'm not really sure if those are actually binding. Like, what would happen if Russia just violated this vote and just continued this war? What would the UN do? Because I've never actually seen them do anything, as far as I know, historically, in response to a country like Russia or the Soviet Union violating a resolution of the UN, if you know what I'm saying. But anyways, Hamad Ali said, live cams in Kyiv show life goes on as normal with air raid sirens blowing. Is it really normal in Kyiv? I'm watching live cam hosted by Savvy. I can't watch live cams on the stream. One, because if an ad pops up, I actually may get a copyright claim, so I gotta watch out for that stuff. But as far as I know, life is going on in normal in Kyiv. For the most part, people do have to continue working at some jobs, although some of them are not as important to the war effort as others. But people do have to continue on working in some places like restaurants and things like that, because people have to eat and they have to figure out how to keep people alive during this. So normal life does continue during sieges for some people, but for others, they've joined territorial defense units and things like that. So while it's normal-ish, it's not entirely normal because they are under a state of siege at the moment. So I'll just leave that one at that. Thank you for the question, by the way, Hamad. And Justini, I believe that's your name, said, according to experts, there's no way Putin can win. I can agree with that for the most part. Well, actually entirely, because they've already wasted a lot of resources. And resources cost money, and Russia doesn't have a large economy to work with. And I've heard some people say that the economic side of a war does not matter, but the economic side of a war is the most important part of a war. It's all about really supply and the ability to pay for that kind of supply to run a war. And so, I mean, I can state one example that comes to mind, the best, when I'm thinking about a war costing a lot of money and it has a lot of issues because that country didn't have a lot of money, and that would be Bourbon, France, before the revolution took place in the 1790s. They almost spent their entire treasury on the American Revolutionary War, and that showed later on when the country almost had no money to just function with, and domestically. And so to that point, I would say that the Russians will probably will of course not win. They're not going to win, but it's mostly going to be because of their economic issue now. And also their economic issues that they had to start off with. It was almost impossible for them to support this kind of large-scale and continued war for a long time. And so I believe the Russians are starting to realize that, and that's also why, kind of like talking about Day 7 a little, that's also why the Russians are now in talks again with the Ukrainians for some kind of ceasefire. And I believe that the Ukrainians actually had pre-existing conditions on this one instead of the Russians, and the Russians had to stop aerial bombardments of Ukraine for the duration of the talks, I believe. But I'm not really sure about that, so take that with a grain of salt. That's just me saying what I'm assuming, but it may not be entirely true. So we'll move on to the next question. Let's see. Russians won't go door to door. I don't think they will. It looks like they're mostly like avoiding most houses, like, and clearing them and stuff. It looks like they're just kind of trying to roll through the cities as fast as possible and hopefully just break through Ukrainian lines and make them fall back so that way they don't get encircled themselves, is what it looks like they're doing in some of the cities. But in other places like Kharkiv, they are looking like they're starting to get bogged down a little with trying to go door to door from house to house, because a large city like that must be cleared in that way, or else you might as well not be clearing it at all. So in cities like that, we can see it's taking them nearly forever to make any kind of progress because they simply cannot go door to door. It's almost impossible for them to be able to do that. So I do have to agree with that to a point. That's actually a pretty good observation. Uh, let's see. I'll answer a few more questions, and then I'm going to move on to the southern front. Uh, Putin will go to jail. I don't think he'll be going to jail, but I think something will happen to him. I don't know what. Maybe it'll be a government coup or something like that, but I'm sure that something will happen to him very soon because what he has done has generally made him unpopular with the Russians, it appears, even the Russian government, and a bunch of other people and most of the international world. So I think he'll be out pretty soon, regardless of what happens, maybe within weeks or months, or maybe right at the end of the war. I appreciate this style of reporting. Thank you, Vinny from Los Angeles. Oh, thank you so much, Vinny. I try to do this the best I can. This morning, it's kind of sad that I had to do it in the morning because the internet cut out, and I don't really know why it cut out anymore. I was told that last night it was like major networks were down across my entire state, but now I was told this morning it was really just our area. So I don't really know what happened with that. So hopefully it isn't the Russians trying to target me because I don't really have a lot going on here. I'm just reporting the news that can already be confirmed. And if they are, I'm going to keep on streaming regardless. And then our last two things will exactly, I don't want YouTube to strike his channel. I don't know what's that's in reference to. I don't know if you said something earlier. But yeah, I wouldn't want YouTube to strike my channel either. That'd be really bad. I've gotten a couple of copyright claims that have kind of been baseless on like the videos I'm showing that come from TikTok. Like I had some other group claim that they owned a TikTok, which I didn't understand. And Putin's best move would be to resign. That is entirely true. I can agree with that completely. It'd probably be a very good move for him to just bow out and leave and try and have that position of the government filled with someone else. Although I feel like Putin and his let's see, I believe they have a president and a prime minister in Russia, and the prime minister right now is Medvedev, who's kind of been like his buddy throughout his entire presidential campaign, because there's a 2-term limit in Russia, but it's only 2 consecutive term limit. So like in America, it's a 2-term limit, regardless if the terms were consecutive or not, which means they were one after the other. You can only run 2 terms. You can only serve 2 terms as the president in the U.S. But in Russia, the rule only applies to consecutive terms. So Putin will serve 2 terms, then they will switch, and Putin will be the prime minister for a term, while Medvedev is the president for a term, and then the next election, they switch it back around, and then Putin's the president for the next 2 terms, and then Medvedev is the prime minister for the next 2 turns. And so that's how they're operating the system. Is a very corrupt way of doing that. And you know, it's just trying to make it look like they're following the law, but everyone knows that they're kind of rigging their elections where Putin wins every time and kind of like kills off the competition in some ways. But regardless, that's how the politics in Russia is working. And if he does resign, that would probably be the best way for him to go out, or otherwise they may overthrow him, or they may even kill him, one or the other. I think he, honestly, at this point, anything that happens to him would be well-deserved, for sure. So I'll leave that as the last question I answer for now. And now we're going to move on to some offensive action by the Ukrainians, which may be something of a shock to y'all, because the Ukrainians haven't been known to be doing a lot outside of their borders at the moment due to being in a defensive war, but they did hit an IL-76 at the airfield at Rostov-on-Don with a cruise missile of a sort and destroyed an IL-76. And hopefully this video is still up, and if it is, I'm going to show it to y'all.
Не знаю, пацаны, вот, блядь, ил стоит.
It's been deleted. But you could see the IL-76 had been destroyed on the runway, which was a good thing. It's a very good sign that the Ukrainians are actually hitting this airport continuously, because a few days before that, they said another cruise missile had hit this airport, and it had destroyed, I believe, an Su-27 and an Su-25. So it's a good thing to know that the Ukrainians are getting a couple of kills of Russian aircraft while they're on the ground. That's a very good thing. And so moving on from there to the area of Mariupol. Mariupol has been declared under siege, as this drone footage from Stary Krim shows that there are Russians right outside of the city of Mariupol within a small village called Stary Krim. But anyways, I'll just show y'all the video and let y'all see it for yourselves. And you can kind of see when they zoom in, like the Z's on the vehicles a little, but not really that well. But they are, in fact, Russian vehicles. So it suggests that the Russians have, in fact, encircled the city of Mariupol at the time of yesterday, around midday. So today, the city of Mariupol has been besieged for nearly 24 hours, just about a day, maybe a little bit more at this point. But more information will be coming out in this afternoon stream about that siege, and we'll see if we have any extra information about that. And so, moving on into the actual city proper of Mariupol, we have seen that the Ukrainians have managed to capture even more equipment from the Russians. This time it looks more like it's rifles, RPGs, kind of small arm stuff, but nonetheless it's still captured equipment, which is a good thing for them. The BMP, I said that they had captured mostly small arms. I don't know if they captured it from a different location, but there was video footage of those same BMP-3s having been captured the day before, just right over here. I believe right here. Yes, it was actually on day 4 that they had captured the BMPs. So I think that the captured equipment may have been on the same day, but the report and the video only came out yesterday, so I counted it as a day 6 event instead of a day 4 event, although that might not be entirely true. It may have also been a day 4 event, but the video just got out late. So anyways, we're going to move on to the center of this front. The location is unknown, but we know that it's somewhere in southern Ukraine. We can see that the Ukrainians have captured a large deal of Russian POWs. I'm not going to say any more about it. The footage pretty much speaks for itself, but I'll just show it to y'all.
Быстрее думай, внимание никого. Ой, я не включу резерв. В случае, если вас прорывают, какие резервы туда потянут? Нас ничего нам поставили, смотрите, ничего нам не... Старший кто это был? Позывный. Север. Север. Військово звання. Це кадровий русский, блядь, ДНРовец, кто? Наш тоже вроде. Нас кинули всех, у нас собрали 1000 резервистов и поставили вот это Зайцева и разные лица. На глаза. Кадровый, блядь, россияне есть? Я не видел. Куда нас собрали всех казарму, привезли сюда, поменяли просто самые кадровые, которые стояли, ну, которые воевали.
It's very interesting to me because all of their uniforms are really ragtag. Like if you look at them, it's like they're wearing all different stuff. So I don't know if those are actually Russians or they just claimed that they were Russians and they were some kind of Donetsk Republic or Luhansk Republic soldiers that had managed to be captured around this area. But nonetheless, that was like a ragtag group of almost like rednecks from the United States out there fighting this war that had been captured. I don't know where they got those kinds of clothes, where they found rags to put on instead of just normal uniforms. But nonetheless, the condition of those POWs is really poor, and it may suggest that the Russians are, maybe if they were just straight up Russian Federation soldiers, it may suggest that they're having to try and scrape the barrel for just clothes even to supply these troops with, although I don't know why. But we'll just leave that as nothing but pure speculation. We do know that there was Russian forces, we'll call them, POWs captured, but we don't know from what actual country, and we don't know why they were in such bad condition in terms of their uniforms and equipment. But anyways, we'll move on to the city of Melitopol, as we saw yesterday that the citizens of Melitopol blocked the Russians on the road. I'll just show you the video. The video pretty much speaks for itself. So here we go.
Вы будете по мирным стрелять? По мирным! У нас нет оружия!
Oh my god. I think the Ukrainians are actually pushing that massive Russian armored car back. I can't really tell though if they're putting it in reverse or not, but that's really nuts if they are. It looks like they aren't. It looks like they're applying a little bit of gas and pushing the Ukrainians back, but But anyways, I'll cut the video short because I'm just wanting to show y'all the resolve of the Ukrainians. But the truth of the matter with this video is that even with the Ukrainians in a captured city, the city of Melitopol, which has been captured entirely by the Russians days ago, their spirit has not been broken. And it's an inspiration to the rest of the country and the world that these people, even in the face of the Russians moving through, firing shots right off in their faces to try and make them get off the road, they will still stand there, and they will even try and push a police truck back. Although they know it's nearly futile, they will try anything and everything to stop the Russian advance, even in captured territory. And that just says a lot that no matter what happens, the Ukrainians are determined that they will win this war in any way, and they are not going to let the Russians win. Even if it means that they have to literally stand in front of an armored car and get run over by it, they will not let the Russians pass. And I believe that's something that all Ukrainians feel. They don't want these Russians in here, and they're going to make sure that the Russians know that, and they're going to make sure that they try everything in their power so the Russians do not succeed. So with that being said, I have to say that the city of Melitopol is full of brave people, just like the rest of Ukraine. Every single one of these dots on this map is full of nothing but the bravest kind of people that you can find anywhere in the world, along with their president. And I believe that Ukraine is setting a precedent for what's expected of a country and its government in terms of how people act in the middle of wartime. I mean, like these people even put the British to shame during the Blitz in World War II, with Winston Churchill staying in London even while it was being bombed and the citizens going about their daily lives. Because of the situation, but still, you did not see British citizens running up to Panzer IVs and trying to shove them back, or pulling the tankers out of their tanks and beating them to death. You didn't see any of that, and I just believe that Ukraine is just setting an example for what an actual country that believes in its independence and sovereignty can do. And so anyways, I'll just leave that little speech as it is, and we'll move on to the city of Kherson, where there have been a decent amount of developments today. But before I do that, since this is a rather short stream and there's not a lot of info to cover because half of it was covered yesterday, I'm going to hop back in the comments section and take a look at what people have got to say. So, let's see. We've got Gwen Marie, ask him about what's going on in Ukraine. Oh, we're already covering what's going on in Ukraine. So if you want to see what happened yesterday in day 6, or if you want to see what happened on any day so far during the war, I actually have a whole list of streams as a watch, a playlist on my channel, and you can just go in there and watch this war. Excuse me, from day 1 to day 6 at the moment, and day 7 will come out at 10 o'clock Eastern time tonight. Do you know how many military personnel do we have? USA, we have more than Russia. Yes, we do. Even in just active, and I'll just go over the Army numbers, because when you're talking about ground wars, while the Air Force is important, the actual number of service members in the Air Force is kind of like not really important in terms of manpower. Like, if the U.S. Air Force has 325,000 service members, that doesn't mean that there's going to be 325,000 extra service members on a front line with a rifle, because most of the Air Force's support to their aircraft, like their ground crews that repair and maintenance the aircraft and other things like that, and they also have a large computer section in the Air Force, but I believe they're starting to now divide that up into the Space Force at this point to try and kind of like divide the command structure, so that way it's not having like conflicting kind of like interests in the same branch. But nonetheless, yes, the U.S. Army is actually much larger than the Russian Army, just in the figures of raw service members alone. The U.S. military has 550,000 active duty members, and several 100,000 more that fall under the National Guard and the Army Reserve and so on. But just in the active members alone, we outnumber the Russian Army nearly 2 to 1. I believe nearly even 3 to 1 if you want to round that up to about 600,000 soldiers, and the Russian ground forces only has about 220,000. we outnumber them in just active duty soldiers almost 3-1. And so if we were to actually get involved in a ground war where there were no nukes involved and we were just pushing through Poland and Belarus, I mean, not Poland and Belarus, I'm sorry, Belarus and Russia, the Russians and the Belarusians combined wouldn't even pose a problem to the U.S. in terms of just their ground power alone. And then, you know, you go into budgeting and their equipment and all that stuff, and then, you know, we beat them there too by large margins. But, you know, that's beside the point. The fact of the matter is that the U.S. Army, in terms of active service members alone, is about 2 to 3 times larger than the Russian ground forces is, almost in total. But anyways, I'll move on to the next question. Thank you for that question, by the way. That was a great question. We're going to move on to JBO 2000. I'm sure a lot of countries' money is... Oh, we've already answered that. Let's see. Oh, we've already answered a decent amount of these, but let's see. Worth 1.6 Robux. Sorry, Russians. Wow, it's really worth, like, 1 ruble is pretty worthless, actually, I guess, according to that. War crimes. Yes, there's been a lot of war crimes being committed. If you want to check those out, join the Discord server, and under the useful links section there, I actually have this day 6 map, and it shows most of the atrocities that have happened against civilians, as long as it's not graphic, and so you can watch that and see the actual extent that Russians are going out of their way to attack citizens almost directly. Anyways, we'll try and answer a few more questions. Oh, there's a lot more now. Let's see. Don't underestimate the Russian military. They have far more power than currently displayed. The amount of money they spend on their military is misleading. Low pay, low equipment cost. Pointless. I don't believe that's entirely true at all, because if you don't have a lot of money to maintain anything or pay anyone, then you're not going to be able to fight a war. I mean, like, you know, that's like saying Joe has $10,000 and he's going to buy a car, and then Mary has $5,000 and she's going to buy a car. But don't let that $5,000 difference mislead you, because Mary can actually buy a car that is as good or even better than Joe with his $10,000. That just doesn't even make any sense, really, when you think about it, because if she obviously has less to work with at the start, like Russia has less to work with in terms of budgeting and their just national economy. Obviously, they're not going to be able to field a lot of stuff. They may have 10,000 tanks on paper, but if your budget for the entire military is something around, like, I believe around $50 to $60 billion, obviously you can't maintain all of that equipment at the highest level of being ready to use. Most likely, most of those vehicles are sitting around at, depots, and they're getting cannibalized to keep the other tanks running at this point, really, due to that small military budget. So I'll just leave that at that. Bro, we bombed everything and support Israel cutting off food and water from the Gaza Strip. I don't really know what the we bombed everything and support Israel cutting off food and water from the Gaza Strip is from or about in response to what I'm saying. So we'll just leave that alone. That helmet looks like it's from World War II. It kind of does. I believe they're actually the 1968 helmets that were issued to the Russian army in 1968, but they're incredibly old. I mean, like, it's like, I mean, like, I don't not expect that from the Russians. In fact, I do expect it, because they've been trying to modernize the military from that for several years, but I don't really believe they've achieved that entirely, if that video was Russian soldiers. So to that degree, I mean, like, you know, the equipment is just old. They don't have enough money to keep on equipping everyone with the newest stuff like America does. So with that, I'm going to move on to the area of Kherson and Mykolaiv, and then we'll move on to some international news, answer some questions, and then I'll cut day 6 to an end, and then I'll be able to get on to day 7 this afternoon. So here in Kherson, we can see an aerial view of the Ukrainians and the Russians. The Ukrainians are no longer in these positions since yesterday, so I've deemed this video safe to watch, as it's not really disclosing any sensitive information about the Ukrainian armed forces. But nonetheless, I'll just let you watch the video and let y'all see what this looked like from the air. Apparently, it is not a video. It's actually a picture. But you can see that the Ukrainian forces are down here, and the Russian forces were further on down in the frame, at least in the video, and they were actually trying to push up to these 2 gas stations and try and secure, I guess, more suitable positions for infantry to hold while they tried to push on into the city of Kherson. So that's a pretty interesting picture in its own right, and it's really weird to think that drones are starting to get used a lot, because we've been seeing the Ukrainians use drones to destroy convoys, and now it appears that they're even using drones with better quality cameras to use for surveillance purposes, and it's very interesting that a lot of this footage is coming out. So anyways, I'll just leave that at that, and now further on near the city of Kherson, we have seen that the Russians yesterday on day 6 retook Kherson in the middle of the day because Russian forces were spotted in the middle of the city appearing to secure it. So it suggests that the Ukrainians were once again pushed out. But this news isn't bad because I got some news to counter in a second, but I'll just let y'all watch the video. It's very interesting to me that they don't really keep spacing, you know, because usually I've always heard that in modern combat you try and keep, at least from World War II, because even at World War II they tried to maintain a very large spacing in between soldiers. And when you watch the Russians run, you just see a lot of little groups of them. Like, look, here's a little cluster, there's a cluster there, and now they're in a big cluster. I mean, like there's like 4 of them just within like 3 feet of each other, and it's like, my question is, do they ever think that there may be a Ukrainian just sitting around in one of these buildings with an old RPG-9 with like the high explosive type warhead or whatever they're called, rocket? We'll just call it a rocket because that'll be the simplest thing to say, and that you could just shoot it at this group of 4 guys, really just 3 right there, and just wipe out all of them, instead of having them all spaced out a decent bit, so that way they're not all going to get wiped out easily. But I don't know. I mean, like, that's the Russian strategy. It's working very poorly for them, and that's a good thing, so I'm not going to criticize it too much, or they might get some ideas. Moving on from that, while the Russians did take the city of Kherson earlier in the day, during the night on the 6th day, it appeared that the Ukrainians were launching a counterattack, as a heavy firefight can be heard in this video, and I'm just going to let you all watch it and take a listen to it. So as of right now, I'm not really sure if the Ukrainians have retaken the city of Kherson on day 7 or not, but yesterday it appeared that they were counterattacking to try and retake the city. The city of Kherson's actually been a very heavily contended spot since the beginning of the war. It's switched hands many times in between the Ukrainians and the Russians, as both of them are trying to control it, because controlling the city of Kherson kind of gives you control over the entire Dnieper River. Because if you control Kherson, you're literally controlling like the gateway to the Dnieper, so anything going up and down the Dnieper can no longer like go into the Black Sea, or its cargo can, at least, because if the Russians control it, they're going to block that from happening. And so I guess the Ukrainians are trying to make sure that they keep a hold of Kherson as good as possible, and also it'll stop the Russians from launching further offensives into the heart of Ukraine. Like, for example, we saw that they broke through Kherson and went up to Mykolaiv, but we haven't really seen much development or movement at Mykolaiv anymore, because it appears that this fighting at Kherson is leaving them in a very precarious position to advance, and they might just get cut off and destroyed. So I believe they've halted that until they can actually push the Ukrainians a far enough away distance from Kherson to be secure in the idea that Kherson is under Russian control, and so the poorly run logistical lines can keep running and kind of somewhat supply Russian troops as they try and get to Kryvyi Rih and other cities within the interior of Ukraine. So that's why I took from that. And finally, the last thing we got, speaking of the poor supply lines, is that we have videos of Russians looting stores for any kind of food they can find, which suggests that the Russians are running out of food, they're starving, or there is something so bad wrong with their logistical lines that the Russians are no longer able to supply a steady amount of food. And I mean, there really can't be any speculation for this, because why else would the Russians be going into these department stores, grocery stores and such, and stealing food out of them, rather than they don't even have any food for themselves? So let's take a look at that, and I'll just show y'all what the Russians were doing. You can see they got shopping carts, shopping bags. I mean, like, of course the tweet's been deleted. I expected that, but I mean, like, it looked like they literally just taken a run on Costco and were coming home. I mean, like, it's hilarious at this point how bad the Russian supply lines have gotten. I mean, like, there's even a picture the other day. I couldn't include it because I couldn't actually find a location for it, but they were using like civilian vehicles that they had captured in Ukraine, or they had acquisition from Russians in Russia or somewhere, and they had painted Z's on all of them, and it was just this ragtag group of the oldest kind of trucks that you ever seen, and they were using them to run supplies to the Russian front, and that just tells you how bad everything's going for them, that they're even, it looks like, running out of just normal military trucks to transport this equipment with, and supplies with, so very bad for them. Also, we have some amazing news that I wasn't able to cover yesterday, but the Ukrainians have claimed to destroy a convoy of some 800 vehicles around the Mykolaiv area. They said it was done with the cooperation between the Ukrainian ground forces and air forces conducting coordinated strikes on this convoy, but as of their official report from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, they say that 800 vehicles have been destroyed. Now, I do have to say this because I don't want to be entirely just trying to push stories like this, because 800 vehicles is an incredibly high number. So I don't really know if that number is true, or maybe it's been stretched a little bit by the Ukrainians to make it sound even better. But what we do know is that they claim that there were 800 vehicles destroyed, and even if it's less than that, like a few hundred less, several hundred vehicles destroyed is an incredible figure, regardless of what they are. And if they're supply trucks, that's even better. Because you don't have to necessarily take out tanks and armored personnel carriers every time you attack a convoy. Taking out their supply lines is even more important than taking out tanks and armored personnel carriers, at least in my opinion. So, very good for them on that news. Even if it's not 800, that's still a great improvement of the fighting conditions here in the south for the Ukrainians, because the Russians will probably be starved out of gas, ammunition, and food before long entirely, and they'll have to start trying to retreat to reorganize their supply lines. And further on north, up near Mykolaiv, we can see that a Russian Pantsir self-propelled anti-air has been destroyed. It's very similar to a flak rad, if you've ever heard of those. The Germans use a vehicle that's kind of like a bus with an anti-air equipment system on top of it. But this one's very similar. I'll just show you all the video and let y'all see the damage that the Ukrainians have inflicted on the Russians once more. Very good news for the Ukrainians, because destroying anti-air equipment is very important to trying to get that little extra leg up in the air supremacy fight, because as of day 7, the Russians still do not have air supremacy over Ukraine. It's still being contested at the moment. And so the longer the Ukrainians can keep on contesting the airspace, the better off their position is, because while they can do that, the Russians cannot just fly in supplies, and they're having to rely entirely on trucks, and they're already having problems with that. So the longer air supremacy is contested, the better. Moving on to our last news from the area of Ukraine, and then we'll move on to some international news and more questions, is that we've seen that the Russians have abandoned more equipment near the city of Mykolaiv. I'll just show you all that footage right now, because it pretty much speaks for itself.
Опа, вас знову вітає баштанка. Ми, звісно, не цигани, но техніки налупили в москалів дуже добре. Так що, непрості ми люди, баштанці, ми, звісно, хлібосольні.
So as you can see, there has been even more destroyed, captured equipment and abandoned equipment around the area of Mykolaiv, because while most things are abandoned, it looks like the Ukrainians are starting to just capture them and reuse them. So that's very good news for the Ukrainians. And before I move on to the remainder of the international news that wasn't covered in yesterday's stream, I'll answer some questions. So we've got One Moonbeam. I saw the POW's video in town, mostly conscripts. I believe you're talking about that one video I said was captured in southern Ukraine. They may be conscripts, but I'm not really sure. If you could give me some information about that, join the Discord and send that to useful links or some other chat group and the server that's used to relay information through an official link, so that way I can try and get some more information on it. And if that's true, I'll try and clear that up in the next stream. They look like average Russian Gopniks. I do have to agree. I mean, like, they just look like a bunch of like your average Joes. They look like the kind of Russians that just have beer guts and they go and watch European football games all the time. It's really funny that people like that are fighting a war, but you know, I guess they have to rely on whoever they can rely on. James McDaniel, never forget to divide Russian power by protecting Russia and their exploits into foreign countries. I don't really know what that means, so never forget to divide Russian power by protecting Russia and their exploits. I don't really know what that means, but so I'll have to skip that one. I'm very sorry about that. Stephen Bryan, I was stationed in Europe for 13 years at JU 2000. Them having GPS is not important. I was a tanker and it was never important to me. Huh, that's an interesting tidbit. Let's see. The Ukrainians are badass. They got balls. They really do. I mean, like, every time I see videos of Ukrainians doing anything, it's just the most brave stuff I've ever seen. I mean, like, you know, standing in front of tanks, getting warning shots fired at them, and they still stand there. I mean, like, there was this one video, it got deleted because it was a tweet, of course, but there was a guy fist fighting someone somewhere. I mean, it was a normal civilian with no weapons fist fighting a Russian soldier with an AK, and at the end of the video, the Russian had fired warning shots at this guy's feet, and in the very last frame, you could see the Ukrainian still lining up a punch to go straight to his face. And so, I mean, like, these people are just the bravest people I've ever seen, and that's why I keep on reporting on this, because I feel like the Ukrainians deserve to win this war. There's no reason that they should have been invaded in the first place, and the fact of the matter is that they love their independence. They've loved it ever since they got it, and they're fighting to keep it, and so I feel like they deserve to keep it, and the rest of the world ought to help them to try and keep their independence the best they can, and even help them maybe reclaim Donetsk and Luhansk and Crimea as well, although Crimea is now considered sovereign Russian territory by the Russians, so that would be like an offensive into Russian territory at this point. But anyways, moving on from that, that's getting a little bit caught up in, you know, just talking about what ifs. They removed street signs from central Sumy, but I'm guessing every Russian tank has a GPS anyway. I mean, like, they probably do, but a lot of their vehicles don't, because we've seen some ambulances having to ask for directions, but that may be true for the tanks. I'm not really sure. The Russians are clearly in the wrong, but I'll give them credit for not running them over. I will kind of give them credit to a point, because they didn't run them over, but they are attacking civilians everywhere else. So I guess it's kind of like a shining glimmer of hope in the darkness in terms of how Russians are starting to treat civilians, because they didn't actually run them over and they could have. So I guess that's a good thing. Let's see. He's saying die. I don't really know what that's in reference to. No, they're shouting murderers. I don't really know which of these they're in reference to. Maybe they're in reference to the convoy being blocked. But I can't speak Ukrainian to back that up. But if that's what they are saying, then that's actually pretty brave of them too, considering that the Russian is firing warning shots at them. They changed signs to point towards The Hague. That's a pretty good one. I like that one. That was actually a pretty good comment right there. I'm currently serving on the front lines on the Russian side. Oh, okay. Well, as long as you're not really into what they're doing, you know, I guess you can stay around. The soldiers weren't ready. Do you really serve for the Russians? Yes, we stopped fighting at night because we lack night vision devices for all of our troops. Huh. I don't really know if that's true, because most of the time the videos come out and the assaults and pushes are happening at night inside of Kharkiv and Kyiv. So I'm not really sure if that's entirely true. I mean, like, if you are a Russian soldier, thank you for providing us a bit of information, but from the videos, it looks like there would be a little bit of conflicting evidence to that. At Enforcer, from Christopher, the International Crimes Court said they are investigating war crimes. Now, let's say they are war crimes committed by Putin. What can the ICC do to Putin? I don't really think they could do much, you see, because it's not like they're just going to walk in some UN cops or International Crime Court cops to Moscow and say you're under arrest, and the Russians wouldn't do anything about that, because, you see, the Russians are a nuclear power, and so if the International... let me make sure I get the name of that right. If the International Crimes Court says that he has committed war crimes, he could just say, well, you can't arrest me or I'll just nuke everyone, and then they won't do anything to him. It's kind of like what they did to the Soviet Union during the Cold War. I mean, like, they would say the Russians have violated Czech independence or something, you know, like during the invasion of Czechoslovakia, and they just say, well, what are you going to do about it? And then no one could do anything about it, because you risk a nuclear war if you tried to do anything about it. So I don't really think there's much that they can actually do. If anything's going to happen to Putin, it's going to have to happen from inside the country instead of externally. Moving on to the next question, and then we'll move on to international news. Let's see. Yes, we stopped fighting. Okay, we already read that. Hi. Hi, Jelly Beans Jr. I'm glad to see that we have some Junior Jelly Beans in here. I know probably is. I don't know what that's talking. I guess that's like a discussion in the comments. So, believe nothing you read and hear only half of what you see. Um, how in the world do I hear what I see? I don't know how that works. But believe nothing you read. I would have to believe a lot of what I'm seeing because you can't really fake Russian convoys being destroyed. Because of the amount of if the Ukrainians were lying about that and destroying their own vehicles for propaganda footage, they would have destroyed their entire army at this point. As far as all the video footage of Russian destroyed equipment is gone, so I believe almost everything I see. That's what this entire war report's focused on, is on what we're seeing. And so it has to be backed up with actual hardcore evidence of the location and what's been destroyed or what's happening in the video, and then it gets put up into this report. So to that point, I'm believing most of what I'm seeing because that's what these reports are based on, is hardcore facts based off of video evidence. London didn't have tanks moving in on it, though, did it? But yeah, I know what you mean. I think that's another discussion in the comments. So I will move on because it looks like we're getting a lot more questions. So I'll just move on, and we'll start talking about international news. I hate that I can't respond to everyone's comments. I mean, like, at the beginning of the stream, when I only had like 30 viewers or so, I answered everyone's comments, but now there's so many of them that I can't get to the news if I was to keep on answering comments. I really hate that, and I'm sorry to everyone who I can't answer their comments. But believe me, I try to answer as many of them as I can, and I'm really sorry I can't get to all of them. So anyways, we're going to move on to some international news in the support of Ukraine, starting off at Moscow, where there's been the most developments. Yesterday we saw that the morale in the Kremlin was low, and there was actually a high-up Russian official that believed that the war in Ukraine was never going to work, and he said that. But I'll let y'all watch yesterday's stream if y'all want to see that. And also there's a map where you can just click on the link and go to it and watch it for yourself. That's in the Discord. Link for the Discord is in the description below. We can also see that it was very easy for the Russians to see where the Ukrainians were due to spy satellites, but now it appears that an anonymous hacker group has taken down the control center for the Russian space agency. So now they no longer have connection to their spy satellites, which is something very interesting to me, is that the cyber warfare side of things is actually playing an important role in some areas for Ukraine, in their favor. Well, actually, it was anonymous. The hacking group NB65. So that's the hacking group that's hacked the Russian space agency. I don't know how they did it. I don't really know the process of how hacking works, but the fact that they hacked them is something in itself. So I'm very proud that they were able to pull that off. That's a very good thing. And then we also see, because there's been a lot of protests in Russia, and the two biggest ones have, of course, been in the city of Moscow and the city of St. Petersburg, where Putin was actually born and from. But we can see that some anti-war protesters were arrested, and what's the most interesting thing about these anti-war protesters is that they're not grown-ups, they're children, and they arrested kids. You can see a picture of this kid being processed in a police station. You can actually see more of them in the back of a police van, and finally, you can see them in a jail cell where they've thrown all the kids. And all I gotta say is that you're in an oppressive country run by a dictator when they're even going to arrest kids for what they're saying. Because you wouldn't see that happen in any other country rather than an authoritarian country like this. And so I hope these kids grow up and they actually know what the Russian government is about, and that they become the change in Russia if no one else becomes the change, because what they're enduring is as messed up as anything that's happening to the normal Ukrainian citizen during this war by the Russians, is what the kids are having to endure in Russia by their own government. It's just jacked up. It's screwed up. And you can't look at that. No one can look at that picture and try and come up with a way to justify that, because who in the world ever arrests kids for what they say? That's just insane at that point. That's just going into a crazy amount of control over the public populace. So I'll just leave that where it is, and we'll move on to St. Petersburg, where they are arresting everyone and their dog. During the protests in St. Petersburg yesterday, it appeared that they arrested a woman as well as her dog because they threw it into the back of the police van. I'll let y'all just watch the video and see it for yourself. As you can see, there's the dog right there. They were putting the woman into the back of the truck at the moment. But they'll pick up the dog and actually put it back there with her in a second. I believe that's actually the first dog in Russia with a criminal record now, but we'll see what happens to the dog. I'll try and keep you all updated on that news because it's very odd to me. What in the world would they do with the dog? Are they going to put it down? Are they going to put it in the jail cell with that woman? Like, that's just really confusing to me. That was really weird because you would think that they would just ask the woman, what are your relatives, so we can call them, and they call up her relatives and say, she's been arrested, can you come pick up her dog, or something like that, you know? I don't really know what they're doing with the dog, but I'll try and keep some more information up on that. Meanwhile, Finland has broken their neutrality, and now they are starting to supply arms to Ukraine. I have a source here for that information. You can find that on the map on the Discord server, link in the description below, but they are starting to support Ukraine with weapons. Also, BMW has stopped all production and exports to Russia of their vehicles. Source right there, you can find that in the Discord, link in the description below. Sorry for stuttering there. But that will be a huge blow to the Russians because I believe a lot of their cars are actually BMWs, if I'm not mistaken. Although that's not true. I don't have any information to back that up at the moment. It's just speculation on my part, but I believe that most of the cars that people buy in Russia are BMW, so that's going to be a major hit to the Russian economy because they are not going to be able to get income off of those car sales anymore or anything like that. It'll also be a big hit to the Germans because I believe one of their largest export markets for BMWs was to Germany, so we'll see about that. I may not even be entirely accurate on that statement. The Russian BMW, ownership could actually be much lower, and therefore the amount of people buying them for a year may be much lower, but I believe that that is accurate as far as I know right now, but if I get any more information, I'll try and update it as soon as possible. Meanwhile, in Switzerland, the UN walked out. 140 countries got up and left when the Russians began to speak at the UN Council in Geneva, Switzerland. I'll let y'all see the video because it's a pretty crazy thing to see. What? Where did that video go? Huh. Apparently that video URL got replaced with another one. That's never happened to me before, but that was weird. Anyways, 140 UN countries got up and walked out. I hate that video link doesn't work, but I'll try and get a working one at the Discord later if I can. Meanwhile, in Canada has officially declared that they are cutting off imports of Russian crude oil. While that is a significant statement to make for a country, I got information that the last import of Russian oil into Canada was in 2019. So I guess that statement is more of like an official, like, ceremonial statement. I believe that would be the best way to describe it, more so than an actual statement to cut off Russian trade. Because, you know, if the last time they got an import of oil was from Russia was in 2019, making a statement in 2022 saying that you're no longer taking Russian oil is kind of pointless because you weren't taking any in the first place at that time. So at this point, I've covered all the international news except for one thing that I just noticed at the very top. The Russians appear to be doing something that's very similar to what they said before they invaded Ukraine, where they were only conducting some simple military exercises, and that's that they're saying that they are simply doing a training exercise with the Russian Navy. They've deployed an excessive amount, somewhere around 6 submarines, I believe, according to the source. And it's another link to the Kharkiv MLRS attack. I don't know what's happened to all these links. They're like getting replaced with the same thing. But there was about 6 submarines that deployed from Murmansk, and they said they were conducting training exercises in the Barents Sea, although that's about the same thing that they said before they invaded Ukraine. So the truth of that statement is kind of being contested right now, and whether that's actually supposed to be a slight hint that the Russian nuclear submarine forces are ready or not is up to debate. And so now that I've covered all the news around the world and inside of Ukraine concerning this war, I'll answer as many questions as I can. I'll probably answer questions for another 10 to 15 minutes, and then I'm going to end the stream so that way I can start working on the next stream that'll come up at 10 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. So if you're watching this and you're new to the channel, there will be a Day 7 update tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So let's hop to the comments and see what we got. Let's see, we've got Jeff saying Jeff Rowley Evertonitz. Putin will get them drunk before the attack. I don't know what that means, so we'll move on from that. You have to be. Oh, maybe y'all are talking about getting the Russians drunk before the attack. I mean, like, maybe they'll pass out, like, a shot of vodka, but I mean, like, since they can't even get food to the front, I bet you they'll even go without a shot of vodka if that's a thing that they do in the Russian army, because they did that to the British in World War One. They would give them all a shot of, well, a drink of grog before they went over the top to, you know, kind of like bolster their nerves. Well, pretty much they were just getting them sauced enough that they would go over the top without a problem, and it would ease their nerves a little bit too. Fantastic job you're doing, bro. Greetings from Mexico. Thank you so much, man. I love your name, Mix Boxer. That's really cool. I guess you're some kind of boxer down there, and if you are, that's really cool. And thank you so much for the support, man. I live in Germany, and this is from one of the mods. I live in Germany, and I need GPS every day. Actually, in America, which is a huge country, but it doesn't have like the population density that Germany has, so I bet the road density is also a lot greater over there. I actually hardly ever use GPS, so you know, saying that, I'll just move on. If Zelensky were killed, that could have bad consequences. I believe if he got killed, he'd probably go down as a kind of martyr, because it seems like nothing is quelling the Ukrainian spirit to push back the Russians. And I believe if he was killed, people would remember what he was saying about the Russians, and they would fight even harder due to the president then becoming a martyr. I've never actually seen a time in history where anyone's been killed supporting a cause, and everyone who was behind that cause just quietly stepped away and just made the cause disappear. I've never seen that happen before. You can even look at like the Easter uprising in Ireland. When the British started executing the leaders of that rebellion, it didn't make the rebellion go away. It made it stronger, but then they figured out how to become a little bit smarter and keep everything more hidden until they were able to actually effectively do anything. So that being said, I think if Zelensky got killed, it actually emboldened the nation even more, and you would see more civilian attacks on Russian citizens. So that being said, we'll move on to the next one. Thank you for the statement, by the way, American Matt. Tazan Drew 04, it's that grandpa. I don't know what that's about. I mean, like, maybe there's a lot of grandpas in Ukraine, so maybe it's that grandpa. Where are you getting these videos? Only have a small screen phone to watch, cannot read fine print. I'm getting them from Reddit. I have a link to the Ukraine Reddit, but most of my videos are coming from different Reddits rather than that one. That one's just for you to get to like the main center of Ukrainian activity at the moment. But usually I get the footage from Ukraine combat videos subreddit. That's where most of them come from. And then I get some more of them from combat footage. Civilians at large are not the target. They are not, but they kind of are becoming the target, because they're not really trying to make sure that their attacks are pinpoint accurate, so now civilians are getting caught in the fire as well. I mean, like, you really can't say that when they aimed a cruise missile at the administrative building in Kharkiv, and that was filled with nothing but civilians, and they all got killed. So I don't really know how you could be saying that civilians are not the target when they're attacking civilian infrastructure like the Kyiv TV tower as well. So I don't really think that was a tasteful comment, so I'm sorry, but that one will get removed because it's kind of untrue at this point. Ukrainians are the toughest. I feel, yes, they are. They're very tough. I mean, like, these people, I've never seen people like this. They're tough as nails. They wake up and they eat nails without milk, you know? I mean, like, these people are just the strongest people I've ever seen. I mean, like, these people are setting a precedent for what the defenders of a country must do. And it makes me think that over here in America, there's always people who talk about, oh, if the Russians invade, you know, because everyone always imagines that America will get invaded, although, you know, we have like 2 oceans surrounding the country, which make that rather difficult. But anyways, a lot of people talking about, oh, I would fight to the death. And now that I'm seeing what Ukraine is doing, and I don't really know what the national stance has been over there, kind of if it's like that or not, but seeing what they're doing, I'm starting to think that people who say that might actually be holding up to what they're saying, because these people are just, they're not stopping. I mean, like, they're almost unstoppable. They just keep on holding back the Russians and defying the odds. I remember CNN said on the first day of this war, the Russians would probably arrive in Kyiv and the capital would fall within 24 to 32 hours. And here we are on day 7, and Kyiv still has not fallen, and most of the country is still held by the Ukrainians, and the Russians are making slow advances, and we're starting to see a lot of problems in the Russian logistical structure and also how they're fighting. And now they're already in the second talks and I believe that the Ukrainians are now laying out pre-existing conditions before these talks begin. So that being said, the Ukrainians are a special breed of people, and I have a lot of respect for all the Ukrainians that are currently fighting or are still inside of Ukraine, because they are a fine breed of people. So moving on from that, I feel pathetic compared. I'm sorry, I just messed that up. I feel pathetic compared to them. I have to agree as well. I feel very pathetic compared to them, and that's why I've been spending a good amount of time trying to get these streams together and report news, because if there's any way that I can help out a Ukrainian watching this stream by delivering a little bit of extra info that they didn't know that may help them prepare for something, that is as much service as I can do from over here, and I hope that it's actually helping out some Ukrainians. So moving on to the next one. Weak. I think that's just backing up that one. Yeah, I have to agree with that too. Let's see, at Guerrilla Radio, they said that the Russians are targeting civilians. That's the report from the ground. That's what I'm saying. I mean, like, you can't sit there and say they're not. There's too much evidence of them attacking civilians to be able to make such a baseless claim, and I believe that's why the guy's called Guerrilla Radio, because he's some kind of little communist here in America, and he just wants to start spinning a story that's against the information we've been presented. I mean, like, you can see the videos right in front of you of all the Ukrainian citizens being killed by the Russians, and there's no way you can just lie about that stuff, you know. Let's see. I'm not. Moldova only has a population of 2 million. That's true. It's mostly that Russian soldiers are not like Americans. Imagine someone in Iraq doing this. Yeah, I mean, like, I guess. I don't really know what that's in reference to, what part of the stream you're talking about there, but yeah, I guess. Every day I look forward to another farmer stealing a tank. Yeah, they've been stealing a lot of tanks, haven't they? I've seen a lot of videos of them stealing tanks, and I hope that there's been some more today, because I would love to add those to the news tonight, because it's just so funny to watch a farmer. I did see one. Two farmers got some large John Deere tractors today, I think, and they hooked them up to an APC and just started hauling that thing off. In fact, I think it was an AA vehicle, but it was hilarious. It's just hilarious to see farmers getting that brand new farming equipment that they've been looking for years. They looked like Ukrainian rebels to me. If you were talking about that video of the captured prisoners, that's not true, because the people who had captured them were in Ukrainian uniforms. And why in the world would the Ukrainian army be capturing? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I'm sorry. I must have misunderstood that. I was just thinking about that. You must be talking about the Donetsk and Luhansk republics. And yes, I mean, like, they kind of looked like that, and that's why I was kind of unsure about it. Deserve to win? Funny. Posting comments in my chat? Funny. Why does every bag of flesh and bones are tougher than the next? Still mushy flesh and hot lead? What? I don't even know what that's about. What are the best reports on imposters? I haven't been able to really get a lot of reports on imposters. They try and make those big deals, but I'm not really sure what's going on with that, so I try and not report on that, because there's not enough information to really make clear statements about that stuff. They rather massacre civilians from range with the LMG, less personal than running them over. The truth is that they'd rather kill them with artillery, which is even farther away than the LMG, than run them over. I mean, like, they'll find any way to kill them, and it's just jacked up that they're able to do that, and really no one's actually taking any actual military action against that, because it's just a straight up violation of international you know, like, war rules, the rules of war, of whatever you like to call them. It's just a violation of them. Everyone knows that you don't kill civilians in war these days, especially with precision munitions, yet it appears they're doing that. So I'll just leave that at that. I'll probably answer a few more questions. Hopefully this chat didn't get much longer, because I hate to not answer everyone's question. But anyways, I'll answer a few more questions, and then the stream will end, and the next one will start at 10 p.m. Eastern time tonight. They didn't run them over because that was before they were highly aggravated. Now they must have been aggravated and will not hold back. I don't know, because that came out yesterday. And if that had happened any other day, we would have probably seen it at that hour. And yet we just saw it yesterday. So I believe that they were just trying to have some reserve, because a lot of people were filming, and they may have been thinking that some of them were live on, like, Instagram or something, and everyone would have just seen them run over Ukrainian civilians, and they're not wanting that bad PR just confirmed, you know, although people around would still probably be saying, oh, they're not killing all the civilians, you know, they're just killing a few. Remember how the Cossacks turned against the Tsars? Well, Ukraine's always had a history. I mean, like, yes, I do. But Ukraine's well, wait a minute. No, I don't think I do. I think, well, isn't that why the Cossacks got later wiped out by the Soviets? Because they were Tsarist? I'm not really sure. I don't really know the history behind the Russian Civil War. But I believe that they got wiped out by the Soviets later on because they actually were supporting the Tsar. I don't know. Watch Russian people unloading the ATM machines in long lines dressed like modern American and compared to how Ukrainians are dressed. I don't know what that means. Hot market for tombstone makers. Any investors? That dude who didn't need GPS didn't invade anyone either. Okay. Run west, dude, with your hands up. Okay. Anyone have a what? Okay, well, I'm just gonna try and get to the last few questions here. Putin can only stay in the Ural Hills. Court can't get him there. I don't think the court would get him anywhere in Russia, really, because once again, if someone tries to enter Russia with an intent to arrest Putin, you have an entire country to deal with. If the army comes out of this intact, there will still be the army, and of course, there will always be the police. So I don't think that would ever succeed, regardless where he is, even if he's just in Moscow. Let's see. At the Enforcer, will Russia cyber attack U.S. and or send a nuclear bomb to the U.S.? We're not really sure about that at the moment. There's been escalating tensions, but it appears that on the official Russian stance that has at least been publicized, it seems that that's been dying down lately with the whole nuclear readiness stuff. They did the nuclear readiness thing with sending nuclear forces to Belarus, but they haven't actually done anything beyond that. So I'm not really sure at the moment. I don't want to make a statement either way, and I don't want anyone to really try and hold me to that because I really don't know myself. So I'm just going to leave that as it is and answer 2 more questions, and we'll just leave that at that. Well, we just had a whole bunch of chats get deleted. Let's see. I think... okay. This really shows how raggedy the Russian military is. Yeah, it really does. It's become really raggedy at this point. U.S. destroyed from within, like Rome. I don't really like to focus on American politics in the stream. I just want to make that kind of clear. This is really more about Ukraine and what's going on in Ukraine, and I really don't want to make this like a comment on American politics. That may come in the future once this war is over, because I will be covering current events, but I don't want to cover that right now. This is about Ukraine. I'm not trying to make any political statements about the American political system. You think China will second think invading Taiwan after how the world is reacting? Yes, I think they would. Also, on top of that, they would have to be landing a naval invasion on Taiwan, and naval invasions are hard to conduct for anyone, and so that makes the position of conducting a naval invasion very difficult anyways, and on top of the world response, that will definitely make them second guess it. So I'll answer one more question, and then we're going to end the stream and get ready for tonight's stream. The thing is, USA can't stop nukes like anyone else. That's true. I think we have a Patriot missile defense system which would protect us from a decent amount of nuclear weapons, but the Russians have claimed to develop a new one that can actually fly over Antarctica, which would circumvent most of, well, I think all of America's nuclear defense systems, because most of them are focused towards the Arctic, so that way we can intercept intercontinental ballistic missiles flying over the Arctic Circle, because that's the flight path that most Russian nukes will be taking. It's the quickest path for the nukes to take. So on that note, I'm happy that everyone came. I'm happy that a lot of y'all asked questions. If you like the news that's coming out right now, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also join the Discord, so that way you can get up to date with all the streams and the news that's coming out. Usually this channel is about 12 to 16 hours faster on reporting the news than most news outlets are. Although that was kind of different for tonight because I'm finally getting to this information 12 hours later because of an internet outage that affected the stream last night. But nonetheless, I thank y'all all so much for coming, and I will see y'all later on tonight. Thank y'all all so much.